Podcast. I'm your host, Super Joe Pardo, and it's been a couple of weeks that we have been off here. It was like Christmas and then like New Year's, and then I was sick, and then I was sick again. Or I think I did one episode between then, and then I was sick, and then sick again. But here we are. It's the end of January already. I can't believe we're already through a 12th of 2020. Before I get rolling and talking about what we're going to talk about this episode, which is audio branding and what that means for you and what it means for me and what and a whole bunch of other announcements that I have for the Indie Pod. The Indie Pod I was about to say Indie Pod podcast, Indie Pod conference. I gotta give a shout out to our sponsor, Podbean. This episode is brought to you by Podbean. Podbean is an easy and powerful way to start podcasting. They give you all the tools you need for a successful podcast, such as unlimited podcast hosting, podcast distribution, monetization options for podcasts of any size, and live streaming podcasting capabilities, which I need to get back onto figuring out how I'm going to restream to that as well, because it doesn't work with StreamYard/Restream. And they you can go to podbean.com to sign up. That's podbean.com. My guest tonight, my guest co-host tonight is a professional audio extraordinaire and voice actor. Is it voice actor or voice actress? I don't know if we
voice actor.
Voice actor. Okay, I didn't know if they
actor is the noun. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the way I see it, but I don't know. Every other language has that figured out. It's like the male version is the default, and I don't know that it's a sexist thing so much as it's just a make life easier thing. Yeah. Anyway, everybody, wherever you are right now, give it up for Jodi Krangle. Woo!
Hey.
Jodi, why don't you introduce yourself and give some more of that professional background and explain yourself.
Explain myself. Wow. Okay, put me on the spot. I am a professional voice actor, and I've been doing it full time for 12 years. I am speaking to you from my 5x4 treated sound booth, and mic right here. Do this all day. Talk in my little padded room. Nice to be, talking outside, sort of, to the outside world. That's always nice. I started a podcast myself called Audio Branding, the Hidden Gem of Marketing. And the reason that I did that was because I was finding a lot of professional, otherwise companies were focusing a lot on their visual and their logos and all of that sort of thing, but completely neglecting the audio side of their business. And when you have two things that are very different from one another, you start to wonder if the company's as professional as they say they are. So, yeah, I just feel that this is a underutilized thing that a lot of companies should be very well aware of. And it's becoming much more prevalent. It's becoming a big, big deal, especially since we are kind of completely inundated with the visual. We really are. And it's the audio that is going to really get to our brains. So at this point, we're hungry for something other than visual.
I just realized that in the rush. So what happened was I was really late because of internet issues at the shop. I got back home. I rushed to eat a sandwich. I jump in front of my computer. I connect. Gets connected to the Wi-Fi, and all of a sudden the internet goes out. And I was like, oh no, like what's going on? So I go across the house and to like my modem, my router, and I see a van out in front of my house, and I'm like, oh no, like what's going on? And he's like, oh, it'll be. He was working on the box out front. He's like, it'll be up in like 5 minutes. Cool. But in that time, I forgot to go to Restream, and I'm guessing that's why I'm getting a picture sent to me by Matthew Passy. let me see. I'm pulling it up now because it probably says something along the lines of, answering the hard podcasting questions with Matthew Passy instead of, no, I know. Thank you, Matthew. But this is why I totally blanked on needing to go and update the title for this. It's actually harder to update some of them more so than others. So throughout the show, I'm gonna try to see if I can make that happen and change the I'm doing what I now. That's what he said.
I'm doing what now?
What I'm doing? Oh, I'm doing what now?
Yeah, he's like,
I'm doing what now? Yeah,
on this.
yeah. No, he is not supposed to be on this. I'm very sorry.
Sorry,
1,000 pardons. And if I can figure out how to edit the actual post, because Facebook does not make it that simple as to do, I will do that as we roll here. So I have a couple of things to go over before we jump into audio branding with Jodi over here. So first off, we're looking for speakers for Icon. If you didn't hear, we are looking for those speakers right now. So if you want to, be a speaker, go to indiepodcon.com/apply. And Jodi, you didn't get to speak this past year, I don't think.
No.
It was like a last minute thing that you
it was
decided
really last minute, actually. Yeah,
to drive down from Toronto.
I'm not really a speaker though. Like I'm happy to do.
No, just in a 4x4 padded room. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's our kind of people.
I'm great. But I have something to talk about, I guess, now with the new podcast. But when I went to the convention last year, I really didn't have a whole lot going on. I had a podcast, but I was still really, really new. And I'm still learning. We're
all still learning. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're here.
I'm learning like everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all here to learn, and that's what one of the great things that being a part of anything really. If you're not learning, then you're not growing, and if you're not growing, then you're dying. And that's one of the reasons, that I strive to constantly be learning and pushing myself in all the different avenues that I have picked for myself. Too many avenues I've picked for myself, if I do say.
Yeah.
So,
I actually will be at Podfest. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if are you going to be there?
I will be there.
Awesome. I will see you there in person.
I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we'll actually get to have a conversation in person rather than nice. Like before. Oh man, Matthew Passy never looked looked better. Stacy Greenberg. Yeah, no, I'd agree.
Thank you, Stacy.
doing a great job, Matt. So speaking of Stacy Greenberg, thanks for softballing that up, Stacy. She and I went to the Holiday Inn in where we host formerly MapCon and now Icon, because they had an open house. And they us in, and it was really cool. And I took a bunch of pictures, and I meant to post them on the face. I still wasn't feeling very well at the time in which I went, but I wanted to post those pictures, and I still will post those pictures. But I figured, at a certain point, I was like, let me just hold on to this, and tuck it in my back pocket to pull out on the live stream here. So here's some of the pictures that we have come that I took while we were at the open house. So I don't have comparison like side by side shots or anything like that. But as you can see, nice. it is quite nice. Quite I guess that's considered modern. They put in a marketplace.
What is it with hotels and their floors? I just don't get those carpets. Like every carpet has this really wild design on it. What is that?
Well, casinos do it to keep your eyes
and no one will see.
But yeah, you're right. I don't know. It looks like some kind of with like spin art project from I guess like the 90s or whenever spin art became like a thing. Here's one of the bathrooms in one of the rooms. It's very
Nice.
nice. Hey there, Stacy. Hi, Stacy. Thank you for being in my shot there. But the rooms have been upgraded and quite nice, if I do say so myself. Um,
Again
so
with
it,
the floors.
yeah, like Triforces on the floor. I don't know.
Yeah,
Somebody's a Zelda
way
fan,
too many
clearly.
hotels. Way too many conferences.
But for anyone that knows, like the bar area has been much improved. They used to have like half height stools there, and now they're full height stools with a full height bar, and yeah, it's very nice. They had the TVs there. The TVs used to be like, the TVs were out. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse? The TVs used to be like out here on the triangles. It was kind of awkward. But now it's all cleaned up. There's like a pull-out couch in this room here. This is the suite that I assume I have it booked. I hope I have it booked. Don't try and book it because I kind of need it, especially with this nice round table. So we can set up some like base camp kind of thing going on the day before. And here's the room. So
this year, just to
I'm sorry.
When is Icon this year?
It's September 24th to the 26th.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So yeah, so late, same like weekend as last year, which is later than in previous years. In previous years, we were like the first or the second weekend in September, the weekend after Labor Day weekend. Do you guys have Labor Day weekend? And
yeah, we do. Same day as you.
So even the bathrooms, have been upgraded. I don't know if there's these are nice tables and chairs that we've had many conversations around in the previous years.
The ones that happen in the hallway are always the best.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons people love this hotel for that reason, is because like literally the over here is the ballroom. So like you're checking in here, the bar's right there, and the ballroom's right there. Nice. So like when you walk in the door, which is just over here on this side, right next to where you check in at, you're in it. Like all the podcasters are right there, are all hanging out. This is one of the side rooms that I believe we're going to rent as well. So yeah, like the front door is right there. There's check-in and everything's right there. So that's one of the awesome benefits to doing this thing. And so Stacy says the pattern is to hide dirt. Yeah.
Some hotels get a little more psychedelic than others.
Lou is excited. I'm excited. He's been to that hotel as well. Matt that said I thought I looked thin, and Stacey, yes, she crashed my invite as a +1 because she designs hotels and because she lives in the area. So it was great to have somebody to go with me instead of just soloing that. So thank you, Stacy, for making me
hotels. Wow.
Right? I wasn't even going to go, and she was like, "What do you mean you're not going to go? Like, I want to go. I want to be your +1." So yeah, so that's what they got going on there. I'll post these pictures in the Facebook group. Speaking of the Facebook group, if you're not signed up, you should totally sign up. Go to indiepodcon.com/group to do so. The group has actually been expanding rapidly in the last, it was dead for 2 weeks, as far as growth. And then all of a sudden, like 3, 4, 5 requests a day are just rolling in. So which is awesome. I guess there was a little bit of lull, I guess, with the holidays and stuff. And now we're back in growth mode, which is absolutely awesome. Speaking about growth, if you haven't checked out the ultimate guide to starting your podcast, go to indiepodcon.com/SAP. Now, Jodi, tell me, what is audio branding?
Well, it is consistency in your audio across the board, across all of the places that you touch your customers. So if your on hold music is cheesy 80s music or like hard rock and your company doesn't match that image, then you might want to reconsider your on hold music. Or if it's classical and you aren't a buttoned up company, then you shouldn't be playing classical music on your on hold. um, it's consistency in the type of tone that you use throughout all of your touch points. So because of what I do, I tend to focus on the voiceover and choosing the right voice for your social media and your videos and your on hold IVR and your commercials and all of that kind of stuff is very important. But it's all of it. So it's not just the voice, it's the music, it's tones that happen when you maybe make a transaction. Like I know MasterCard and Visa both do that with their companies, and they spent millions of dollars on this. um, it's commercials and how they sound and the type of tone that you use when you're either the music, the voice, the sounds of, like car companies are notorious for the revving engine, or different types of sounds that are changing now because of the different types of cars that are being made. So for instance, I can't remember which car company this was, but there was one that had a kind of metal on like a ping, like it was almost like a metal on metal sound that happened every time you heard their commercials. But now the metal sound is kind of going out of fashion because the differences in the cars are starting to be more apparent in them becoming more green and, the electric thing and people wanting more of that. So that car company needs to change that audio sound to better fit their car company as it is now. So there's lots of different things to pay attention to with this. And it's across a lot more places than people think. So really the key word here is consistency. Know what your brand is in general and play to that.
Yeah. So who did that talk about it? I can see his face and I can't. Oh man, why am I blanking on the name? Well, he was doing the man. I'm feeling terrible about this. He did it. Well, he did. It was towards the end of the conference, and I can see his face.
Mm-hmm.
So he did a whole thing where he like played all the different tones and talked about the audio signature and how important it is because of all the his whole talk was around smart speakers, and that's why I should know is who I'm speaking about. And
was that Chip?
Chip, yep, Chip.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. For some reason, you know what? I was getting Chip Edwards and
there was another fellow that did a whole thing on podcast intros, I think.
I'm sorry, what did you say? You broke up.
Sorry. There was another fellow that did a presentation on podcast intros and outros and how they needed to be professional. That was early on.
Who was that?
I can't. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but yeah.
So there is a talk like that, and if you, I guarantee you, probably, it's in the start a podcast ultimate guide. So if you go to thepodcon.com/SAP, I think it's one of the ones that's already shared in there. I'm like scrolling through it trying to find it, but I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah. So that so audio signature absolutely is yes, Chip Sever. Thank you, Stacy. I wish that I had seen. Well, you were a little behind because of the delay and the live stream, but yeah. So and I love Chip, and that's why I feel so bad that I was blanking on the name. Like I can see the face. But anyway, when it comes to audio signature, it's not just about those tones, right? It's like you said, it's about how the audio is recorded. If if you're NPR, like you have that style, and you have something that you're trying to fit everything into, like the close talking, like super quiet, whatever, or like it's just the style that you bring to the table. And I would say that follows you, not even just that, right? It's marketing materials. It's the package as a whole. So when it comes to podcasters thinking about their audio branding, what's some of the things that we can do when we're on the cheap and we don't have millions of dollars to sink into a marketing company to tell us ding 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 is the thing that we need to be spending $12 million on?
Yeah, you don't need a tone. I mean, someone like MasterCard or Visa, they kind of need stuff like that because they have all sorts of these units that people buy stuff on that need to play a tone that is recognizable across everything. And those units that you use to make a transaction are everywhere in all sorts of environments. So I understand why they spend big money on this. As far as what podcasters can do, a good intro and outro, even if it's only a little snippet of music, I would say also that it should be consistent. Again, choose something and at least stick with it for a season. You can change it, but that piece of music will be associated. It'll start to be associated with the beginning of your podcast. So if someone heard that in another room and, had listened to your podcast a few times, they'd know what was about to happen. So it's just something that alerts people to what you're about to offer. And the more professional you can be with that, again, I do intro and outros. That's kind of part of the job too. The more it can get people excited about what you have to offer.
So, speaking of that, Heather Ordover gave a talk a couple years back at MapCon, talking about those audio tones and the importance that they play, especially for people with like special needs and that kind of that in that realm, because of the fact that like it enables them to I guess follow along easier, and but not even just in that arena, because of the fact that like like when a sponsorship spot is going to come up, or when we're going to go to that segment of the show, and that like, hey, by this point I can doze off now because I don't care about that part. So I hear the ding, like I know we're heading to the next thing, and I can just tune out at that point.
Or it can alert you to a different segment in your podcast. So I know I did a interview on my podcast with a podcast producer by the name of Katie Lohr. And Katie produces podcasts. And one of the things that she does is she does a different sound that sort of tells you that she's about to move into a different topic. So it kind of alerts you to the format of the podcast as you go along. And when you're changing a subject, sometimes, I mean, you really should warn people, if it's a different segment of the podcast and it's completely different, then it's good to alert people to what's going on. Just things like that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Then now, with that said, I don't do any of that here.
Well, and I don't either, but then I don't switch topics all that much during a podcast. Mine are really short. So,
well, and so that really brings up a great point. So like last night, me, Jennifer Crawford from DC Podfest, and Samantha Riley all started the first episode of our brand new podcast, where we actually have thank you it's called Business Geeks. So it's called Business Geeks, and we have multiple segments in the show, but it's all done in a live, like it's all done like this, right? We're just talking, and then turns into turns it into the podcast, and we're just having a lot of fun with it. But we have multiple segments throughout the show.
Sure.
And it brings up the question of like, okay, maybe at some point I should invest in like a Rodecaster, just so I have an easy way of playing those sound effects and those tones to get us through the live stream and add a little extra layer of $600 production value.
Maybe, but like it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't need to spend a whole lot of money on it, but just some
Well,
kind
yeah.
of indication that things are changing might be nice. And again, having a produced podcast or an unproduced podcast depends on what your branding is.
That's true.
I don't also I don't subscribe to the idea that you can't be authentic while you have a professional podcast. I think that if you sound good, people are going to want to hear it. And yes, you can get away with a lot if your content is really, really good, but you shouldn't have to.
So my theory on this, because I take a little bit different
Yeah.
approach. So like I always say, like if you can get your audio quality or production value to like 70 to 80%, your content should carry you the rest of the way. And I always go back to the example of here in Philly, we have four sports talk radio stations, like three of which are on FM. So, these are like, CBS. Okay. CBS has talk radio station and $30 billion company, and they're relying people to pick up their cell phone and call in. And we all know cell phones sound like poop. So,
yeah.
And not that the studio doesn't sound great, not that the sound effects and the overlays and the singing and the coming in with the news breaks and things, the sports on the 20 or whatever don't sound great and well produced, but you're still relying like 60, 80 to 70, 80% of your show is somebody picking up the phone to call in.
As long as the announcer themselves sounds good enough, I don't think that's a big problem. And I do like the authenticity of that kind of a call-in show. I don't think that the guests necessarily have to be as worried about it as you, the host, needs to be.
Right.
It depends on what kind of show you have. But I do think that you should pay attention to at least having a decent mic, to at least being close enough to the mic that people can hear you and you're not yelling from across the room. I've heard a lot of podcasts like that where they're not close enough to the mic and it sounds like they're yelling, or it sounds like you're hearing every echo in the room around them. That can be a bit much. It's especially hard for me to listen to, I have to tell you. Because I'm picky, because I make my living in this type of environment. So it's really tough for me to be able to sustainably listen to a podcast that does that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, and they know like there's a cutoff level of like how bad a cell phone can sound or how delayed a cell phone can sound.
And I'm not saying you have to be perfect.
No,
you can get away with a lot, but just being close on the mic can solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, definitely. And I to me, like I always have like a shot clock going on in my mind when I start to hear the cell phone starting like not to sound so great. Like my shot clock starts to like, all right, I wonder how long they're gonna like let this go on for before they cut it off.
Yeah.
And usually they usually don't. They usually let it go through, like get it through. I would say almost like 8 out of 10 times they're letting it go through. And usually, I mean, it usually sorts itself out. But so what kind of audio branding have you implemented in your show? Because I mean, your show is still, relatively new. And what have you been experimenting with?
Intro music, and I do my own intro and outro for the podcast. And yeah, we're both coughing here. That mute button is getting a workout. Yeah, so I do my own intro and outro. I have started to put together an intro for my guest before I actually get them on the show. So instead of spending the beginning part of my interview with them doing their bio, I actually sort of craft the bio beforehand and record that separately, sounding as conversational as I would when I'm talking to them. And then saying this is the first part of my interview, this is the second part of my interview, and then at the end of the first part, there's like, tune in for the next part, and the outro music. And for my own really small solo content, I really only do a shortened version of my intro because it's 4 minutes or less. And no one wants to go through like a 60-second intro just to get to the 4 minutes, right? So I'm not going to make people go through that. So I have a shortened version. And like I'm learning like everyone else. I'm still somewhat new to the podcast genre in general. And interviewing people again, when you're talking branding, doing a good interview is actually part of the audio branding too. That's again something that I have to learn as I go along, because being a good listener is really, it can be hard at times, but it's super useful.
It absolutely can be hard. I've been there a number of times. And I think to me the worst offender of it is when the person, like, we talk prior and they want to tell me their whole life story, but like the way I did my show was I heard it for the first time so I could ask like legit questions throughout.
Sure.
And like if you're telling me your whole life story and like, okay, well, I'll just repeat it on the show, like I've already checked out. Like
Yeah.
by the time you're going back to tell me it again, like I've already checked out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know, it's just the way that my mind works. But I know some people would love that because they could go and do the research. I mean, shout out to Eric Hundley for the infinite amount of hours that he puts into research for his, for his guests on Unstructured. That's just not the way I could do. I just can't do it.
I like reading the bio beforehand just so that I can sort of look up stuff that I want to. And I like coming up with a point form note kind of idea of questions that I might want to ask. But I'm not married to their order, and I'm not married to the questions at all, really. If they go into a tangent and want to talk about something completely different and it still has to do with audio branding, I'm perfectly fine going there. So whatever happens.
Well, yeah. So I think well, how many episodes are you in so far?
I just put out an interview with a guy named Joshua Rogers, who is a hip hop culture coach.
Oh, awesome.
How awesome is that? Yeah.
How easy, wait, how hard is it for him to find clients?
Well, he's in the Netherlands, first of all. But he coaches kids. And a lot of people in general, but he coaches mainly kids, and these kids need more confidence. I mean, who doesn't really?
Oh, okay. So he's like a life coach, but comes out of the okay. All right, I get it. I thought he was like a hip hop historian.
No.
When you described, I was like, that's cool, but like, how many of those do we need in the world?
Well, yeah, no,
and it's got to be hard, or how many exist in the world, and it's got to be hard to like get that job.
Yeah, he actually coaches kids about confidence. So but he does it through the music and through hip hop. So it's fantastic, and it's science. It's actually science. Because you make playlists, I make playlists, we all make playlists for whatever mood we want to have in a day, right? Like that happens a lot. So he just introduces the kids to certain sounds that will make them happy, energized, more confident, and involves the culture of hip hop that he just happens to love because he was a DJ for a while. And so it dealt with audio branding in the sense of sound that influences us.
That is really cool. That's awesome. Yeah,
the question you asked me.
Well, no, it wasn't the question I asked, but no, but
11 episodes so far.
So 11.
One.
11 episodes. No, an awesome topic. I mean, as a DJ myself, like I have a huge appreciation for the confidence building. That's why people would ask me, like, well, why do you like Kanye West so much? Like,
Yeah.
have you actually listened to any of it? Like, it's super confidence building. For the most part, like 98% of it is confidence building, and that is the important part to me. So at this point, shout out to Brent Basham, by the way.
Yeah. And Justin Shank, actually.
And Justin Shank and Anita. Yeah. So at this point, I want to talk about the conference a little bit. Give some people some other updates and things that are going on. If you don't know, it's September 24th to the 26th. September 24th to the 26th in just outside of Philadelphia. So it's a little bit closer for everybody, especially if you're flying in to the Philadelphia International Airport. It's easier to get to if you sign up with offer code IPP. Yeah, you know me. The indiepodcon.com/register. That is where you will find a 10% discount for your ticket. You can also use that same discount code IPP in the IndiePodCon shop. There's a bunch of merchandise in there, from shirts to hats to stickers and such. And I am totally going to lose it in the second here.
Yourself, and yeah, I can say that it is a really awesome conference, and I enjoyed it a lot last year.
Well, thank you. I greatly appreciate that, and I'm glad you made the trip all the way down. Was it like 8 hours for you?
Yeah, around that. Yeah,
around 8 hours to get down. This year would be 1 hour less because it's.
Well, that's true, but I also wasn't the one who came the furthest. You had people from Australia there.
Yeah, Dr. Tyson, Sam, and Leon, or Babe, as we were calling him throughout the event, were all the way from Australia, and super thankful for them coming out and being a part of it and helping, and so many other people that came from very far distances, and it speaks to the reason, one of the main reasons we decided to change the name of the conference from MapCon to IndiePodCon. It was well overdue. It should have been probably changed about 2 to 3 years into it. Actually, yeah, pretty much 2 years into it. It should have been changed, but here we are. I did open up some more guest spots for being a guest co-host here on the IndiePod podcast. If you go to IndiePodCon, .com/guest, you can get your spot.
It's a coughing fest here, yeah. Sorry, people. We apologize. I'm Canadian. I have to apologize.
Oh, of course. I don't want to offend you in your apologies. So yeah, you can go there. I opened up a whole bunch more spots up until I think August. So now like May because I think before it was like it ended in May was like the last spot, but we had spots all the way opened up until August. So if you haven't gotten a chance to be a guest here on the IndiePod podcast, go to indiepodcon.com/guest and get your spot, because they will. I expect them to fill up as they already did.
Lots of fun.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was I'm really glad that we held off from last week, because I was coughing an awful lot. Even last night when we were recording the first Business Geeks podcast, it was a mess. I had to keep muting, and I was just going to town coughing. So I feel a little better tonight.
As he says before, coughing fit.
Trying not to turn it into a fit.
My goodness.
Really trying not to turn it into a fit.
Okay. Drink something. Yeah.
Yeah. Take a little sip.
Whiskey.
No, I actually don't drink. Fun fact.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just I like to. Yeah, I've never drank, so it's just weird for me. It's not weird. It's just different for me. Blah blah blah. What was I going to say? Mentioning again, speaking. If you want to speak at Icon 6, go to indiepodcon.com/apply. And I think we're gonna get back to see. We got a bunch of more comments in the chat here. Let's see here. The swag is rad. Congrats on killing it with your own conference, man. Thank you, Brent. I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to seeing, speaking of conferences, I'm looking forward to seeing him and you, Jodi, and a whole bunch of other people down at Podfest.
Where it's warm. It'll be warm.
I hope. I expect it to be warm. It should be warm.
Yes. Warmer than here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, today was almost 50 degrees, so I'm okay. I mean, that I don't.
Okay.
You know Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so it's 50 degrees, and that's. I mean, to me, that's pretty warm. That's like put the windows down, kind of warm.
It's below 30 here, so yeah.
Yeah, 30 is cold.
It's cold.
So Brent's hoping that I'm not dying. No, I'm not dying. But neither is most of the people that got coronavirus. It was like a less than 3% death rate. I mean, that's a lot, but
it's still people dying.
Yeah, it's people dying, but it's not like, oh, you got that, and you're like, oh, I'm really, really sorry to hear that you're gonna die. Like, go get your stuff in order. Stacy says cough drops. Yeah, I don't have them on me. I don't have them on.
And I don't think you want to be sucking on something live.
No, not particularly. Well, the ones I have are fisherman's friends, and those actually I think make it worse. Like it almost like makes it like raw like up in here, and then it just exasperates. Is that a word? Is that exasperates?
Exasperates, I think. Yeah.
So yeah. So when it comes to podcasting, Jodi, like what made what brought you into this world? Because like you were already recording and doing voice acting and stuff. What really turned you on to the idea like I gotta have a podcast?
Well, it was just an interesting experiment in using what I already have to make something that other people might want to listen to. I mean, who knows, right? Like, I never know who's listening or not listening. It's not, I don't think I have a particularly, big deal of a podcast.
Yet. Yet.
Well,
and to someone, it might actually be a big deal. Just don't know yet.
I mean, I'm enjoying a lot putting it together. I had a podcast when I went to MapCon originally, and it was a podcast that was for creatives, self-care for creatives, because I am one and multi-passionate, all sorts of things going on at the same time. And I know a lot of people who are like I am, and probably like you are really hard on themselves mentally. Like it's just, we're the worst to ourselves. So, I went and created a podcast about it and just sort of started talking about it. And I made a Facebook group for it. And it's still going. So, clearly people find it encouraging. It's called Jodi's Silver Linings. But I started to see the power of the podcast when people asked me to they started asking me to coach about this stuff. And I'm not a life coach, nor have I ever said that I wanted to be a life coach. So I thought it might be time to switch my focus, because clearly, while I was just talking about stuff that I was experiencing and seeing from other people and learning along the way, it wasn't where my heart was really. And audio is where my heart is. That's kind of why the whole audio branding podcast started. But also, I didn't want to talk to fellow voice talent. I wanted to talk to the people that might need a voice talent. The people that should be thinking about this, as opposed to the people who already do it. So that was where the switch kind of happened. And I'm learning as I go, and I'm loving every minute of it, really. Like it's fantastic. I get why people get addicted to this.
Yeah, it is easy to get addicted to. I know when when I was getting started, I like every opportunity I had, like, can I spin this into a story? Great,
Mhm.
let's get the mics out and sit down and talk about it. And it's not that I haven't, but I think, like my focus has changed, looking at, like, okay, what not only makes me happy, but is also going to give me a return on the investment of time,
Mhm.
right? And not just in happiness, right? Because, like, recording things, that it makes me happy, but at the same time, like, if I'm not doing something that is able to produce, some form of uh monetary, not
Mhm.
necessarily back, like giving right back, but like building towards that or mounting towards that in some way, shape, or form, then I can feel good about the fact that, like, not only am I investing the time, but I'm taking time away
Mhm.
from family. I'm taking time away from playing video games. I'm taking time away from, like, self-care. I'm taking time away from all these other things that I could or should be
Mhm.
doing with that time. So it's not just about me giving up the hours. It's about investing towards something greater as well.
Mhm. And it feeds into your business. So, that's again why I decided to do this because it feeds into my business. But not only that, I get to interview my clients. I mean, how cool is that? It's pretty neat because they do pretty interesting stuff. So, giving them a platform to talk about what they're passionate about as well is a wonderful thing too.
Yeah. And it becomes a great opportunity for you to get to know your clients better, but also for them to feel like you care more.
Yeah,
And
I value
uh
them. They are, definitely interesting people that I wanna get to know better. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, just the one you said. I mean, that's awesome. That is
Yeah,
that
the
is great.
one after Joshua, I have his second part coming out next week, and it's Wednesday morning. The one after him is a fellow, by the name of Monty Bowden, who works at an advertising agency called Amperage, and they do a lot of charity work as well. So I do a lot of work with him for hospitals, and, we've been working together for years and years. And, but we've spoken, a little bit here and there, but we've never really had a detailed, like, hour-long conversation, And we really got to sit down and have that hour-long conversation, and at the end of it, he ended up interviewing me. It was kind of an interesting turnabout. But it was great learning, how he started and what he loves about his job and how he uses voice talent and how he uses audio branding and all of that stuff that I didn't necessarily know about before we started talking. And it was a thrill to hear about.
Well, and that's great that you get that opportunity to strengthen those bonds. I mean, it's one of
Mhm.
the reasons I do this show. It's one of the reasons I have people on Dreamers. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to do the Business Geeks podcast with Sam and Jen, because
Sure.
it strengthens that bond and that relationship.
So how many podcasts do you have now? 5?
No, it's three. It's
Okay.
three, but I also run a
It's a
YouTube
lot.
channel as well that I kind of bounce back and forth about whether, like, they're podcast episodes first, but they're filmed and then I edit them together. So it's all like, it's meant to be audio driven so that you could just listen to it. You don't have
Mhm.
to see it. Brent says 47. No, I don't have 47 shows, but I have had several other shows other than these three shows. I did a show called Birth with my wife,
Mhm.
where it was leading up to us having our first child, Ava,
Okay.
where it was 30. It was like 30 some episodes or 28 episodes or something like that. So each week we did an episode, and we recorded conversations with, like, our family and stuff, and we interweaved it. It was, partially inspired by Brent Basham,
Mhm.
with his the talk that he gave with his son, and recorded all these different pieces of the puzzle. And it took him a ton of time. He said, "Yeah, we interviewed you about that one." Yeah, so he did interview me about
Mhm.
Birth on his show Digital Dads. So that was, that was a lot of fun. And I've also did Living the Dream podcast with a co-host. That was my first foray into having a co-host,
Sure.
where we mostly interviewed Disney legends. So we had a lot of like I've got to become good friends with some pretty cool people that are way cooler than me when it comes to their Disney geekness.
That's kind of why we do this, isn't it? To become friends with cooler people than we are.
I would agree. I mean, I Facebook friends with Jasmine, the voice of Princess Jasmine. So and so many other people that I've met, Dr. Jeff Barnes, and Terry Hardin, who was like she's a puppeteer and did a lot of work for like Jim Henson and stuff like that. That she was on the Dinosaur Show. Kevin John, who does art for Disney and now Star Wars, and like there's so many like cool people that like I got to meet because like that show. And then we only ran for like 30 episodes before we decided to go our separate directions in because of artistic direction, which was fine. But it's a shame. It's a shame there were so many more like cool interviews that we could have did. Like I got to interview he was the co-director of Inside Out, like Pixar's Inside Out. Yeah, it wasn't Pete Docter, but I can't think of his name. Can't think of his name off the top of my head. But if you look at who the directors of Inside Out was, like it wasn't Pete Docter, it was the other guy. And yeah, so like that's really cool stuff. So
30 episodes seems to be about when a show, like I know that people say it's after 7, but like when you're actually doing the show and you're interested in it and you do it for a while, I find 30 episodes tends to be when it ends. If you're not going to continue with it, that tends to be, because that's exactly the amount of episodes I had with my Silver Linings podcast.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't intended to end at 30. It's just I made that pivot at 30. So
yeah, it was exactly 29 episodes, and we Tony Bancroft, Tom Nabby, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Nabby was Huckleberry Finn in Disneyland as a kid, like Disneyland like first opened. I'm looking up to see who the other. Ronnie Del Carmen was the co-director. He's not he's listed as the story by on Wikipedia, but he was actually the co-director. So I don't know why that says that. But who else? Like there's just like there were so many awesome people. I
know how big you are.
He did like the music for like Lion King and stuff. Like
impressive.
So it was really cool. So it's a shame like that we didn't continue. I wanted to continue it because like interviewing Disney legends was like my thing, but I was also running the Dreamers podcast at the time, and I want to talk about this too because I think it's important that people hear like when things don't work out and when it's time to say goodbye, right? Like to me, like, okay, I'm doing the Dreamers podcast. I'm interviewing like people that are inspiring other people to live their dreams. And there's like business lessons and entrepreneurs and that kind of stuff. And my co-host for Living the Dream, I love her to death, but she had basically the same vision to do the same type of show as I was already doing. And I'm like, I love this Disney Legends. Like we were selling sponsorships and, cause it was easy sell. It's a niche. She has the gift of gab to get those and the connections to get those big names on there. And we were, we were going to kill it. And, but then, she decided to go in a slightly wanted to take in a different direction of opening it up to more people. And I was like, no, we got to stay this niche. This is awesome. And so ultimately it fizzled out, but yeah.
I think people should be given permission to pivot though if they need to. I mean, I'm not saying that your situation wasn't heartbreaking because that was an awesome.
It was George Scribner. I mean, there's so many great people that we got to do.
But at the same time, my thought is that if you're no longer passionate about something, you should move on. Don't think that you have to keep on doing it for some reason. It's okay to stop something and move on.
Yeah. Well,
Passionate.
Brent said
Be
pod
passionate about it.
faded.
Yeah. And he
Uh,
makes a really good point, yeah. But if you're
yeah.
taking a break, in some fashion, not all the time, maybe, but in a lot of cases, if you need that break, maybe that's not the passion that you should be focusing on. Maybe it's time to move on to something else. Not necessarily, not podcasting. It could be a different podcast, but yeah, if you need to pivot, just do it.
Yeah. It's a shame. I would have loved to keep doing that show.
I'm gonna feel bad for you, like, for days.
Oh, stop! It's not worth. This was almost like a century ago. I mean, this stuff goes back to, like, I think it was in 2015.
Years.
Yeah, it was. It feels like it was like a century ago. Yeah. So I Ron Schneider, which was he was the original Dream Finder in Disney World. Like, still friends with him. Like, there's just, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah. Contact with people and you got to meet them in the first place. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we actually did that interview in the Grand Floridian. We like right in like the lobby. We set up the camera equipment and like interviewed him in the Grand Floridian, which was pretty cool. But yeah, just to answer your question, I've done a number of shows. I've produced a number of other shows as well. I've taught a class, like middle school class on how to podcast. So yeah, it's I've done a number of those types of, different shows and things like that.
It's a lot of work. It is a lot of promoting it, not even just making it.
Promoting is head to bow. I mean, that's what, like, when you look at like YouTubers, right? They're like the hardest part isn't coming up with the idea for the video. It's not even shooting the video. It's not even editing the video. It's coming up with the thumbnail.
Yeah.
What's the thumbnail going to look like to capture people's attention long enough and a title long enough to get them to click on it and watch the darn thing? Yeah. Like, that's the hard part.
It's hard to get people's attention these days in general.
Yeah, it is. And but that's also one of the things I love about podcasting is it's up to us, right? It's not, there's no gatekeepers. Aside, I mean, Apple's a kind of a gatekeeper, but it's more of a portal to getting it. Cause like the odds of somebody typing in your podcast, like a term, and finding your podcast in the iTunes or Apple Music world or Apple Podcast, it's so low.
Yeah.
You're more likely to be found through Google searches, Facebook, drive-bys and stuff like that.
I have to say that there was a reason I chose the name of my podcast. Because audio branding is pretty specific, and if someone is looking for that kind of thing, it is a term that people use. So it's specific enough, and people are searching for it, but it's not a huge thing just yet. I think it should be a huge thing, but I'm a little biased. So,
well, no, I think that's a great point. That it is a term that is getting used, and if there isn't any other shows specifically around that, I mean, you see that like with blogs, then you see, with YouTube channels, specific, like it's very specific, right? It's super niche focused. So when they type in audio branding, like they're getting a whole site dedicated to that, or typing in podcast, they're getting a whole podcast dedicated to that, not just one episode. Though in theory, Tim Ferriss could do one episode on audio branding and then be the number one thing, the number one spot for audio branding forever, right?
I already did it. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
But that for me was like proof of concept.
Right.
Like, okay, if Gary's talking about it, then there's got to be something to this.
Yeah.
He's doing it in all of his own videos now. He has like this little bumper thing that happens in his videos. So yeah, he's starting to use it. Why not?
Yeah. Well, I think if you have the capacity to do it, you probably should. It's one of those things. It's like it's just another layer of adding to that production value, getting 1 inch closer to the production value of like TV and the major media, level.
I don't even know that it needs to be that produced. All it needs to be is consistent. Really, that's the only thing.
Yeah. But it's still the piece that's there, right? And that's those
totally.
pieces that we don't even realize that are happening, right?
Yeah.
The sounds of in the commercials and the sounds in the TV shows and the news
is associated with certain companies. That's also something that companies should be very careful with. If you use a well-known song like a pop tune or something for your whatever your product is, then if suddenly you can't use that music, then you've lost your branding. Like that. So using popular music or using music that isn't yours can really work against you. It'll be great in the beginning, but then the minute you lose that, someone else gets your branding. Like, what happens? I don't know.
I mean, we watch a lot of Pixar films here, right? So like, you see that in those Pixar films where, or even in Disney, where like Wreck-It Ralph, right? Like they talk about, like in the second one, it's like they go to eBay. Well, eBay's not. It's a kind of a critical part of the movie, but it's not a critical part of the brand.
Yeah.
Like the next, they could go to another thing. That's why they don't go to YouTube in the movie. They go to BuzzTube because they own BuzzTube. Disney owns BuzzTube, right? Not
That's exactly
YouTube.
it.
So they could go there, but the thing is like then next time they go to the movie, they go back to the Wreck-It Ralph well, for whatever the reason they're going back there, whether it's to make another movie or make a TV show or short film or whatever they're going to do with it. They got to go back to the YouTube well and ask for permission and pay.
Yeah, it's licensing as well. Yeah, totally.
Right.
So if you don't have to license something, why would you? I mean,
right. But that's
kind of a large context.
Yeah, exactly. So with that said, I mean, Pixar did it with Mattel with all their toys and stuff. But even still, like they created the key characters. In the film, like the most important characters in the film. You took all the extra, licensed IP characters away. The key characters, with the exception of Mr. Potato Head, are their own branding and their own creation because of that reason. So they can own it. Yeah. So it's actually kind of funny that they use Mr. Potato Head in that sense, because he is such a key focal piece, like character in the series, yet he's not owned by them. That I know of.
I'm not sure why they did that, but I wonder if there is some kind of reason that they could get away with it. I wonder if there's something in there that, like, maybe it's such an old doll thing.
Maybe.
It's like, I don't know if it's ever public domain, but yeah, like I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's a good lookup question. Well, anyway, Jodi, it's been so much fun having you on. Thank you for holding out. Like I said from last week, I'm glad you were able to make it work for this week. And I hope that I'm feeling even better for next week, because I feel like I'm going to be coughing this the moment I get off the off this show here. So it's been wonderful. Jodi, tell people how they can get in contact with you before we wrap up here.
Well, the podcast is at audiobrandingpodcast.com. And my voiceover website is voiceoversandandvocals.com. So,
Awesome. Well, if you send this over to me, I will get them in the show notes. And Brent Basham is correct. Jodi is the real deal. Honored to have her here, and thank you so much again for taking the time to come hang out and talk audio branding.
Thanks for asking me. It's been fun.
Of course. And if you want to join us, hopefully Jodi will be joining us in September. You should totally come to Indie PodCon. It's just outside of Philadelphia, September 24th to the 26th, 2020. Go to indiepodcon.com/register and pop in the promo code IPP. And if you're not in the Facebook group, join us there, indiepodcon.com/group. I got to get back on the horse of like doing my posting and stuff like that, because it's been a little while and I feel bad. Yes. And if you want to speak, go to indiepodcon.com/apply. And while I don't have the specifics of this upcoming weight loss game. If you go to indiepodcon.com/loser, you can check out the current game, where if you want to bet some money, win some money, lose some weight, we will be doing that again. I think this one ends in within a week. I think that's what we're down to. And excuse me. And the next one will be spinning up probably within a week of that one. So if you're interested, think about it. It'll be like $15 to join for 4 weeks. Lose, I think it's 4% of your weight in that time, and you win a bunch of money to do so. Anyway, I hope you all have a great week. And next week I have a guest who's coming on next week. I should have. Oh man, I am messing this up here. Oh, what? Actually, no, I don't have a guest next week because it is my son's birthday. Now, I don't know what 8:00 at night has to do with a 2-year-old's birthday, but I'm not sure. So don't have anything next week.
You'll be exhausted by the time 8:00.
I probably will be. Yeah. But Brent Basham is our guest the following week, so I am absolutely looking forward to it. He told me to sing it. I'm gonna end up coughing if I don't stop pushing right now. Push it real good. Anyway, everybody have a great week. Thank you so much again.
Bye.